First Class Fatherhood. That is where Alec Lace comes in with his popular podcast.
And one of the most interesting was on a podcast.
Alec Lace interviews high-profile fathers from actors to NFL players with a vision to change the narrative of fatherhood and family life.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood, a family-made media podcast. And I've got a rare event here on the podcast today. I am welcoming the father of a previous guest, Dallas Jenkins, the creator of The Chosen, which is the largest crowdfunded media project in history. His father, Jerry Jenkins, joins me on the podcast today. Jerry is a New York Times bestselling author. He's written more than 200 books. He's very well known for his Left Behind series. His latest book is The Chosen, Come and See. It is based on a novel based on season 2 of The Chosen. So I'm really honored to have him on the podcast today. And by the way, as I told you, First Class Fatherhood is now a part of the Family Made Media Network, and they have got a brand new newsletter that's available for you guys to check out. The link to that is down there in the description below. The newsletter goes out every Monday and Friday. You're going to get stories from Sean Johnson and Andrew East themselves, plus some really great family-centered media content. All you got to do is visit news.familymade.com, put in your email, and you'll never miss out on anything that Family Made has to offer. So get down there and check out the link. While you're down there, smack the subscribe button, tap the like, and let's jump into it right now with Jerry Jenkins on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Jerry Jenkins. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, Alec. Great to be here.
All right, let's start like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I have 3 grown sons with my wife, Diana, and they're 47, 44, and one soon to be 40.
Very cool. Yeah, I had the honor of having your son, Dallas, on the podcast here previously. If you could, Jerry, please just take a minute to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Well, I'm an author, and I don't want to sound falsely modest, but I really believe I'm mono-gifted. I don't sing or dance or preach. Writing is all I do. So I've written over 200 books by now, and about 2/3 of those fiction, but a lot nonfiction as well. And it's been a dream career, and I'm really feel blessed.
Well, obviously, you've had a tremendously successful writing career, Jerry. And take me back, if you could, then. I know you said oldest is in the 40s there. If you could take me back to the beginning of your fatherhood journey, about how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did that experience change your perspective on life?
Well, it was really a monumental thing for me. My wife and I had been married about 4.5 years before Dallas came along, and I had an unusual experience. I was working for a little Sunday school paper publishing house, and I was interviewing men for various stories. I think there were about 5 different guys I was interviewing, all at the same time, basically for different kinds of stories. But at one point in each of the interviews, I asked them the same question, because they were all about twice my age at that point. I think I was 23, 24 at that time. These guys were all in their mid to late 40s. And I said, is there any regret that you have at this stage of your life? And to a man, every one of them said, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids when they were growing up. And I remember going home that day and talking to Diana and saying, when we have kids, if I wind up having that same regret at that age, I'm going to be without excuse, because clearly somebody's trying to tell me something. And so we just set a policy, even before we had kids, that once the kids came along, I would do no work from the office and no writing from the time I got home from work until the time the kids went to bed. And I learned that kids, you tell them they're your top priority. They hear what you say, but they believe what you do. And they spell love, Time. And I have a great relationship with all 3 kids, and never had any rebels or, prodigals. We're best friends to this day. And I really owe it, I think, to that policy that we set years ago.
Yeah, very well said, Jerry. And to your point, too, I think today, one of the things that challenges many parents to do that is this technology that we have, where that wasn't the case many years ago. And it's something that so easily can take our time away. I know for us, our designated time in our house is when we eat together as a family for dinner, that all the technology goes away, and all 6, I have 4 kids myself, and then all of us spend that time together, even if it's just for that. Because it has gotten so far out of control. And I think somewhat of our society here, Jerry, has placed so many of the value in other things other than your family and other than being a father and having that family life. And it seems like we're chasing all these other things. Life's got us get this, get that, get this. And it seems like we've kind of, lost touch with what's really, truly important and what we're really going to cherish the most towards the end of our lives.
Yeah, everybody wants everything right now, and technology is making that come true. I mean, just yesterday, I was ordering something from Amazon, and they said, if you order this much, you can get same day delivery. And so I did. I ordered another, copy of whatever I wanted, and same day got that order. So it's instant gratification. Now, back when my kids were little, I mean, that's back when rainbows were still black and white, but there were still distractions. I could have easily been sitting behind a newspaper or close the door and do my writing and tell the kids daddy's too busy. Just simply wouldn't do that. Well, nowadays, as you say, there's everything that can distract you. We live in this screen generation. We carry these screens around in our pockets. We watch big screen TVs. We sit before screens all day on the computer. Everybody has any excuse they want to do what should be a lesser priority than their own kids.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Jerry. And one thing that I focus on here on this show a lot is the fatherless crisis, where we have so many of our kids growing up without a father or a father figure in their life. And it's really leading to so many disastrous situations in our society. And I just think that if we could get more dads in the home and have more nuclear family units, I think most of the problems that we're seeing in our country would really just start to dissolve quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I can remember when my kids were little, since I was always there, once I got home from work, we would be outside playing and running around and building baseball diamond or playing a game. And my wife said that often other kids in the neighborhood would come home from school and come to the door and ask if their friend's dad was home because they wanted somebody to play with. They wanted to have an adult in their life. Their dads weren't there. And so you serve a role for the whole neighborhood if you do this right.
Yeah, and another part of it too that's missing is our Heavenly Father too, Jerry. So much of faith has been removed from society. I know you have the book out here, The Chosen. Obviously, your son Dallas's creation there, The Chosen, has really just blown up, and it's so great to see because it's so difficult, I think, to compete like faith, values, to have these things in the mainstream type of entertainment compete with the easy distraction of everyone wants to see the violence and the negativity and those clickbait headlines. It's like it seems like that's the easy way to get to people, and you kind of have to bring them to this faith, values, the good part of stuff, and it seems like there's a conflict there. That's why it was so great to see The Chosen take off the way that it did. I know it's like the highest crowdfunded project in history. Why do you think that The Chosen is connected with so many people, and what does the future of it look like?
I think the authenticity of it is the key. One of the things that Dallas and his two co-writers of the scripts are just obsessed with is getting it right and making these people accessible. We see a lot of Jesus movies and Jesus TV shows, but Jesus is perfect and speaks in King James English and seems ethereal. We get the God part of him, but we don't get the man part of him. And so to make Jesus accessible, obviously it's hard to identify with him because he's perfect. But the New Testament implies a sense of humor on his part. And so Dallas and his co-writers have run with that a little bit, not making him always a jokester, but he can tell a joke, he can laugh, he can smile, he has fun with his friends. So that makes him accessible. But the real key are the people that he chose to surround himself with. They're real people. They're flawed. They sin. And even after they've been redeemed, they backslide. Does it sound familiar? It sounds like us. I see myself in these characters, and I think other people do too. A lot of people resist watching this because they think, I've seen Jesus movies and I know what they're like. But you see this and you see real people interacting with each other, failing, becoming forgiven, interacting like friends. Our whole goal is to have people see themselves here and then go back. We don't want this as a substitute for church or a substitute for scripture. We want to spur people back to those things so they can meet Jesus in a new and fresh way.
Yeah, obviously, I think it's a tremendous vehicle to drive people back that way into that direction. And what is your connection here to it, Jerry? Obviously, you got the book, The Chosen. This is based on season 2. I know everyone's waiting for season 3 to drop. We got to get on Dallas with that. But what is the connection with this book to the series? How does this thing? How does it all tie in? And where did you come into? How did you come about writing the book?
Well, I helped Dallas get started in the movie business when he first got out of college, more than 20 years ago. And, but this is all his own deal. And so I feel like I'm sort of pressing my nose up against the glass and saying, can I play too? And he was happy to let me write a novel that accompanies each season. And so this is a little backward. Usually media events, films and TV shows are based on books, not books based on the series. But of course, this series is based on the Bible. And then I come along and write a novel based on the show. And so I'm watching these episodes sometimes 20 times a piece. I never get tired of one scene. They all move me every time. I've always thought everything Dallas did was brilliant, but this time I'm right. And people all over the world, they've shown it at least 400 million times in every country in the world in 50 languages. And so I'm watching these and I'm writing a novel. Now, obviously, these are true events from Scripture. And when I get to an event that was portrayed on the screen, I like to mirror that almost exactly, because I think readers like that. They don't like to see something and they wonder, where did this come from? But I'm allowed to add more backstory and more imagining of conversations and inner monologue, the very kind of things that the writers of the scripts have done. They've imagined things that would lead up to these true events, and I'm imagining even more. So I've been having great fun with it.
Awesome. Yeah, Jerry. And The Chosen, book 2, come and see. I'm going to put the link to the book in the description of this podcast episode so my listeners can get over there and get themselves a copy. And what has it been like for you as a dad to watch your son's success? And is there any kind of any time that he comes to you for advice during the project, creating the new shows and stuff like that? Do you have any kind of disagreements? What's the relationship like with you? And again, watching your son succeed in such a great fashion.
Well, you can imagine how proud his mom and I are of him, and it's just a thrill. When I was 8 years old, I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks with rheumatic fever. My mother took the opportunity then to help me memorize John 3, the whole chapter. And that's the story of Nicodemus coming to Jesus by night. To see that scene come to life decades later, my own son's creation is an incredible full circle moment for me. And it's just been fantastic to see this. As far as, Dallas doesn't need too much advice from me. I'd love to take credit for what he's doing. And I'd like to think he got some of his storytelling gene from Dad. But we really work in 2 separate mediums. I mean, film and TV is really different from books, but we complement each other too. And we can disagree on things, but I defer to him on the film side. He defers to me on the book side. And it's just been a great ride.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned there too, your writing career has been 21-time New York Times bestselling author, over 200 books, as you mentioned there. What advice do you have for the parents out there that have kids that are interested in pursuing a writing career, whether that be a novelist or in any other format? How would you kind of tell the parents to steer those kids?
Yeah, we're always going to need writers, no matter how the mediums change. Some people are saying, books are going to become passé as everything goes onto the screen. Still, somebody needs to write that. And so I would encourage kids, make sure they're studying the craft. A lot of people try to start their writing career with a book. A book is not where you start, it's where you arrive. You should start with short things, learn to work with an editor, learn to be criticized, get 250,000 cliches out of your system. I teach writers online at jerryjenkins.com. We have everything from free blogs and tips all the way up to courses you can pay for and subscriptions to my guild and that type of thing. But check us out. And, we have things to offer for people at any level of income or ability to pay.
Really cool. And then getting back into you as a father, I know when I had Dallas on here, I asked him this question, so I'm curious to hear your response to it is, what type of disciplinarian were you as a dad with the kids growing up? And is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
I would say my style was pretty similar to the way I grew up. We didn't hesitate to spank our kids. We never hurt them. and obviously would never abuse a child. And we were pretty guarded with that. That wasn't a frequent thing, but when they needed it, they got it. And we also use, I see parents today kind of missing this trick. They give their kids these phones or screens, and then they say, well, what are you going to do? You can't get a kid to talk to you. You can't get them to clean their room. You can't get them to do their homework. You've got a bargaining chip. You're in charge. You're not their friend. You're their parent. And you should be saying, look, if you want screen time, this has to be done first. And if you're disrespectful to parents, that's going to cost you screen time too. Use what is valuable to them, what they really enjoy. Now, we didn't have the screens when our kids were little, but there were things they had to do before they could play. We'd say, you work before you play. You always leave time for play, but make sure the work is done too.
Yeah, really great stuff. And what about as far as now becoming a grandfather yourself? How many grandkids do you have? And what has that transition been like from father to grandfather?
I'll tell you, we have 8 grandchildren now, and the last 3 are adopted. Dallas had 3 kids, and Nelson and his wife had 3 kids, and then they adopted a boy from Bangkok, Thailand. It's just been a delight. They've had him over 10 years, and he's really special. And then our second son, Chad, he and his wife had 2 boys, and then they adopted a brother and sister from inner city, Kansas City, a couple of Black kids that are just special and precious. And they've had them about 10 years too. And I have to say, I am a different grandparent than I was a parent. I leave the discipline to our kids to mete out. We try to spoil the grandkids a good bit, but we love talking to them. I find myself a bit of a worrywart. When my boys were growing up, I encouraged them to jump off the deck into the snow and take chances and climb trees and that type of thing. With the grandkids, I'm like, oh boy, be careful, don't hurt, and my kids tease me about that. And they say, Dad, you pushed us off the deck, if you remember. So let us raise our kids that way too.
And how about as far as your faith, Jerry? I know that faith is something big, in your family. Is that something that you grew up with? Is that something that you came to in your own personal life? How did you come across your faith, and how important was it for you raising your kids with faith?
Yeah, I feel really blessed to come from a long legacy of people that were devout in their faith. My father's father was a pastor, and he died when my dad was 14 months old. So my dad never knew him, but we see a lot of the records of his pastoral ministry and that type of thing. And my parents were devout, church-going Christians, and raised us in the faith. My mother led me to Christ when I was just a child. My father had a lot to do with my rededication experience as a teenager, and so we raise our kids that way, obviously, in church. And one of my jobs, when I talked about the time that I devoted to the kids every night, I put all 3 boys to bed every night, and we would sing songs, we would quote Bible verses, we would memorize the books of the Bible, that type of thing. And I see them doing the same with their kids, so it's really been special. And I used to be a little intimidated and jealous of people who had dramatic conversion experiences, came out of drugs or prostitution or some horrible life. And I eventually realized they would give anything to have a testimony like mine. It's just as much of a miracle to be raised in a Christian home with parents who take you to church and love Jesus and teach you that. And so I don't envy anybody that's had to come out of a terrible background. I think it is miraculous. It's wonderful to hear those stories, but I think our stories are good too, that we're raised in the church and we really know the Bible and know Jesus.
Yeah, I think any story that can be a testimony to help more people come into the faith is a good one. And that's what I think you guys are doing right now is one of the biggest vehicles available that are driving people towards the faith. And I pray to God that we have more and more successful projects like The Chosen that will come along to complement that. And I know throughout your writing, I know you've done some biographies as well. And I seen that you did one with Mike Singletary. And it's interesting because in about an hour after this interview, I'm interviewing Mike Singletary for the podcast here. But what got you into doing the biographies, and what did you kind of like? What did you take away from the projects of doing these biographies and working with guys such as Mike Singletary?
Well, definitely greet Mike for me. I haven't seen him in a long time, but we try to keep up a little bit. He was a really special guy. I was a sports writer as a teenager. In fact, I talked my way into a sports writing job at the local paper when I was 14 years old. I was too young to drive. My mother had to wait for me in the parking lot of the newspaper office and take me to the games and take me back there. So I've been a professional writer since age 14. But sports was my first love, and sports writing. But when I had a rededication experience at camp, I felt called to full-time Christian work, and I thought that was going to cost me the writing. And I remember thinking, I'll have to, forget the writing and start studying for the pastorate or for a missionary job, that type of thing. But a wise counselor told me that night, God often equips us before he calls us. So don't give up the writing right offhand. That may be the vehicle that you use to fulfill that call. And so that's been the case. And I've been immersed in that ever since, but really not called to write, called to full-time Christian work. So whatever God wants me to do, that's what I want, how I want to do it. And I use this one gift he's given me.
Wow, amazing stuff. And obviously, you're still busy, you're still at it. What kind of projects are you working on now, and what can we look forward to seeing from you in the future?
Well, I'm working right now on season 3 of The Chosen. I'm using the scripts to write the novel. The next thing on my plate is a book with the manager of the Kansas City Royals, Mike Matheny. We did a book when he was manager of the St. Louis Cardinals called the Matheny Manifesto about how to teach kids character rather than just baseball. And we've got a sequel coming up that we're working on called The Dad Coach. It's for dads that have been pressed into service coaching their kids. Maybe they don't know the game that well, or maybe they think they're coaching future big leaguers. And he's saying, look, what you're coaching are future men, whether they ever play ball again or not. And that's what you need to teach them. He's an outstanding believer. And then I'm going to rewrite my marriage book. It's called Hedges, Loving Your Marriage Enough to Protect It. That book I wrote in 1989, and it's still had several iterations since then, but sadly it's needed just as much now as ever, how to protect yourself against infidelity. So I try to stay at the task and stay busy. You did ask how I got involved with all the sports books. One of my first books that I ever wrote, I think my 4th book, was an autobiography of Hank Aaron. And that opened a lot of doors for me. So I was able to do books with Walter Payton and Nolan Ryan and Oral Hershiser and people like that. So it's been a dream career.
Wow. Yeah. God bless you for what you're doing. It's so much needed, your content, more and more of it in our society today. And any word you could drop for us here on season 3? When are we going to expect to see that from The Chosen?
Well, they're trying to get it done by the end of the year. And I know they're going to release the first 2 episodes in November. And I think they're trying to have, and those are going to be theatrical releases in theaters, but then it'll always be free. And they're trying to get the whole season done by the end of the year. And I'd like to have the book done by around November 1. And then it takes several months to get a book out. So it's all coming, but they've run into all kinds of problems filming season 3. COVID has slowed them down. The weather in Texas has been brutal, all kinds of obstacles. And when they miss a few days of shooting, like they recently had to shut down for 3 days for a COVID outbreak down there, that costs about $500,000 to not shoot, because they still have to pay everybody and they have to reschedule that shot later too. So it's been a real struggle, but that's how you know you're on the front lines, is when the enemy is attacking.
Yeah, that's when you know you're putting out something worthy, is when all these obstacles are coming your way. There's no doubt about that. Well, last thing I want to hit you with here, Jerry, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Well, I think just what I've talked about is that, you will never regret the time you invest in your kids. And so many fathers will say things like, well, I believe in quality time. I don't have much time, but I'll give you quality time. So when I'm there, kids don't know the difference. To them, quality time is quantity time. You tell them they're your top priority. You prove it by spending lots of time with them, and it'll pay great dividends.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. It's been an honor for me. I got to say, Jerry Jenkins, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Well, thank you, Alec. Great to be with you.
You have been listening to First Class Fatherhood. First Class Fatherhood is a family-made media podcast. Please visit www.firstclassfatherhood.com or www.familymade.com to find out more details. You can order First Class Fatherhood advice and wisdom from high-profile dads on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Proverbs 22:6 tells us, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will never depart from it. God bless, and I'll catch you next time.